Yeah, okay, Ado, here we go again. I hope I'm not bombarding you, but here is that bastard roof now. So you see with this, all you wind up having is that the ridge just go all the way straight through the corner. And that is pretty much it. I mean, in the first video, I explained to you how the positioning of the ridge works. So that is just what it would look like from above. But underneath, you would recognize that wherever this hit the beam would be totally different than the first or the second simulation of where the ridge wind up dead in the corner of the beam. So that's pretty much it. I mean, the thing about this is that it's just not a typical thing that, like I was saying, that you would encounter. But it's always a nice thing to have an understanding, because people in Dominica have a thing about them that they want a special design that's different than everyone else, even though sometimes to me it doesn't always make a whole lot of sense. But because you have to understand how troublesome it is to do this. Like I was saying earlier on a typical circular saw, the saw can only tilt to 45 degrees. So you wind up with a degree here that is, say, 59, 58 degrees. You have to cut it at 45 and then use a plane or a hand saw to try to cut that angle here. This one on that side, and the other thing, like you could see, I purposely simulate 2 feet on centers here, and where one rafter end up and where the next one at the same 2 feet on center wind up, they'll never meet. There, if you want to keep them parallel, which is what you need to do for the plywood to be able to sit on or whatever, because if you try to make them meet, you could see what would happen, that distance here would get pretty shallow and then back down to the 2 feet here. So the thing would wind up at a pretty way off base, and then it would make it even more difficult to figure out that angle here. And on this side here, since I'm using the same 8-inch to a foot rise, pretty much the plumb cut on the rafters on this side would remain the same, but it would change on this side. So everything changes. Every time you cut one on this side, the angle here would be whatever it is based on the distance that wall is. So it could be 30.26 like the guy have it on that schematics that you send, but if you move the wall back, that angle could change down to 25, 28 degrees. That angle would change. So every time you cut here, you got to tilt the saw differently to cut this angle, and it still cannot cut it all the way if you're using a power saw. So you may have to end up cutting that by hand, or if you cut it on the saw, then have a plane to actually plane off the rest of it. So it's a very unusual thing to do, but there may be reasons that someone may wind up drawing something like this where you may have to do it. So it's a nice thing to know. But so at least if you ever encounter this, hopefully you still have the video, you can refer back to it to figure it out. But like I said, that in that drawing, you will never encounter, because depending on the building, the wall is not like, well, a bastard roof is a bastard roof, and no matter where you go, it's going to change based on the depth of the wall here and the length of the wall here. Any one that changes, or it changes. So it's highly unlikely you're going to meet a drawing and this is going to be 8 feet and this is 13 feet. So anytime that measurement changes in any way, it changes that angle. So you will never think, well, it's a 30.26 degrees every time you encounter it, because that angle depends on where the wall goes. So if the wall, like I say in the first video, go further back, that angle changes and get closer to 180 degrees. So instead of 30, the angle going to change. If the wall gets shorter or this one move further back, that angle moves back this way. So instead of 30, you're getting closer to 35 to 40, depending on how far back you go. But every inch you move, it changes the angle. If you move 1.5 inches, it may be close enough that maybe just a 1/16 might make it work. But if you move a foot in either direction, whether back this way or back this way, your angle changes immediately. So it's a matter of, like I said, is to figure out from the corner to the corner of where your fascia board would intercept, and that is where that will give you the angle. So as long as you figure that out, the rest becomes, fairly a lot easier to get the rafters on. You got to figure a way to simulate the height for the seat cut there, or the bird's mouth, whatever one calls it. Because if you're going to make it, say, 5 inches from the sitting on the wall plate to the top of the rafter, you have to figure that height, and then when you rest it over there so you could get the plumb cut. Because if it's not sitting at the right height, and you put the mark there for the plumb cut, and the bottom is not sitting at the right height, when you move it down, it's going to change the angle up here. So you have to make sure you have the angle, the depth that you want it to sit here properly. So when you put the mark on it, when it goes down, everything goes down parallel to each other. I hope that makes sense to you. But that is as best that I can explain it. I hope I do a good enough job that you understand exactly what is happening. So you see, like I say, the angle here remains the same. The 8 inches to a foot rise. So all your rafters here, if you're marking them, that they all, but on this side you could see the 8 inch to a foot here change. It's a much shallower angle on this side. So the plumb cut on this side would change automatically. But let's hope that works for you. All right, take care. Bye.